I'd been in love with Silas for 8 years, and every time I mentioned marriage, he'd always say to wait a little longer. Until my 28th birthday party. Our friends were teasing and egging him on to marry me. He lowered his eyes slightly and remained silent. As I looked at him, my heart gradually grew cold, and I finally decided to let go. Amid the teasing from friends, Silas didn't want to respond. What came to his rescue was a phone call. No one knew what was said on the other end of the line, but his expression changed abruptly. He hurriedly left with a single sentence, "Cora, I'll make up your birthday gift another day. Something urgent has come up." Before the words even faded, he had already turned and walked away briskly. He completely ignored the friends' mentions of marriage, offering no explanation whatsoever. Leaving me alone, awkwardly facing the crowd of friends. They all looked at me with sympathy. My heart was a tumult of mixed emotions. To ease the awkwardness, I forced a faint smile and covered for him, "Maybe something urgent really came up at work." These words were meant for our friends as much as they were to console my own gradually cooling heart, sparing myself from further embarrassment. A while later, Silas sent me a message. "Cora, Sienna sprained her ankle, and there's no one to take care of her at the hospital. I have to stay with her tonight, so I won't be coming back." I had lost count of how many times Silas had chosen Sienna over me. With each disappointment, my heart ached until it finally grew numb. I didn't call to confront him as I used to, just replied calmly with a message, "Okay." Then I texted my mom. "Mom, I agree to the blind date." Mom called back immediately. "Cora, you've finally come around. Tomorrow noon at the Lakeside restaurant, both families will have a meal together, don't you dare stand us up." "Alright," I agreed readily. Mom seemed to notice something was off and cautiously asked, "Cora, you and Silas?" I cut in and replied, "It's over." Mom sighed and didn't press further. The birthday celebration ended in an awkward atmosphere. Sitting in the car, I sent Silas the message I'd rehearsed 1,000 times in my heart, "Thank you for 8 years together. Today, we part ways peacefully." This is the first time I brought up breaking up in 8 years. During this time, Silas has mentioned it many times. Especially after Sienna returned to the country, every time I got jealous and made a scene, he would bring up breaking up. I never agreed. This time, I've decided to let go and give them my blessing. As for the gift he mentioned, I no longer have any expectations, he stood me up too many times already. Sienna is the daughter Silas's parents adopted, in other words, his sister. Back then, Silas's mother noticed Sienna's special feelings for Silas and sent Sienna abroad for 10 years. It wasn't until half a year ago when Silas's mother passed away that Sienna could finally return home. The first thing she did upon returning was seek out Silas. That day, I had a sudden appendicitis attack, and Silas accompanied me to the hospital. In the waiting area, the pain was so severe I couldn't straighten my back. Suddenly, Silas received a phone call and became ecstatic. "Sienna, you're back." His voice cracked with excitement. At that moment, he hurriedly threw out a sentence, "Cora, find a doctor yourself. I need to pick up Sienna at the airport first." He didn't care whether I lived or died, walking away quickly without even turning his head. I wanted to call out to him, but the pain left me with no strength to speak. In the end, my consciousness blurred from the pain, and it was only because a kind stranger nearby called for a nurse that I was wheeled into the hospital room. Later, I confronted him about it. He explained, "Cora, Sienna was diagnosed with severe depression abroad and has suicidal tendencies. She really needs someone to take care of her. She just returned to the country and doesn't know anyone here." I had to go. "And you were already at the hospital, you could have asked the nurses for help." I loved him so deeply at the time that I was actually convinced by this twisted logic of his. I truly believed he and Sienna would stop at a certain point, that there would be no further developments, and that he would eventually return to me. But I never expected that, from then on, they would escalate. Silas was frequently summoned away by Sienna, and the time we spent together grew scarcer by the day. Sometimes, he wouldn't even come home at night. At first, he would still offer various excuses, but eventually, he couldn't even be bothered to come up with reasons anymore. In the short 3 months since Sienna returned, I've met Silas fewer than 10 times. He's practically inseparable from Sienna, spending every day glued to her side. I simply couldn't bear it anymore. That day, I went to wait for Silas outside his company building. Even though he'd explicitly told me before not to come to his workplace that it would look bad for him. But I still went, desperate to see him. Sitting in the lobby's waiting area, I watched him emerge laughing with his colleagues. Walking among them was Sienna. His coworkers started teasing him. "Silas, your girlfriend is so thoughtful, bringing you lunch every day and picking you up after work. We're all jealous of having such a wonderful girlfriend." Silas's face beamed with a blissful smile as he gazed at Sienna with adoration. "Yes, having a girlfriend like Sienna is my greatest fortune." Sienna nestled even more affectionately into Silas's embrace, "And having a boyfriend like Silas is my greatest fortune too." Lost in their shared sweetness, they remained completely unaware of me standing in the corner, my face pale with fury. For a moment, I wanted to rush forward and demand an answer. If Sienna is his girlfriend, then what am I? But in the end, I chose silence. I followed him and Sienna, along with a crowd of his colleagues, to the restaurant they had reserved. I watched as they entered a private room. I hid in the one next door and heard them say, "To celebrate Silas and Sienna's 10-year love journey, finally coming to fruition." 10 years? Amidst their cheers and congratulations, my heart felt as if it were being sliced apart. Sitting in the adjacent room, my fingers trembling, I dialed Silas's number and asked him meekly, "Silas, in your heart, what are we to each other?" He paused for a moment on the phone, sounding slightly impatient as he said, "Cora, stop making a scene. I'm having dinner with colleagues right now. I'll talk to you when I get back." Before I could say anything more, he had already hung up. That night, Silas, who hadn't been home in ages, actually returned. My heart was brimming with fury, ready to pick a fight with him. Yet, with just one sentence from him, it felt like a spring breeze melting away frost, instantly dousing the flames of anger in my heart. He said, "Cora, I know you've had your eye on this necklace for a long time. It's for you." He took out the necklace I had long admired and personally fastened it around my neck. In that moment, I felt the warmth of his fingertips and the care that lay buried deep in his heart. I thought, perhaps he still cares for me. At the very least, he understands my preferences. For the sake of this rare moment of harmony, I chose to remain silent, not mentioning what I had seen outside his office building earlier, nor the so-called dinner with his colleague. I told myself there might still be room for reconciliation. After that, Silas did start coming home more often. Yet he still left from time to time when Sienna called, for all sorts of reasons: burst pipes, a computer that wouldn't start, being afraid to walk alone at night. These seemingly trivial matters were like invisible thorns, piercing deep into my heart. Then came my birthday party. The moment Silas walked in, I could tell his mind was elsewhere, distracted. He hadn't even prepared a gift for me. It seemed no one even remembered my birthday. Not until the cake was wheeled out did he snap out of his daze, murmuring a belated "happy birthday" to me. His words rang hollow. When friends teased him about preparing a surprise, he fumbled awkwardly, empty-handed. Pressed about marriage plans, he fell into a shamed silence, the air thickening with discomfort. Then came Sienna's phone call. Without explanation, he bolted. And I, finally let go. The day after my birthday party, I agreed to a blind date arranged by my family. The person was a childhood neighbor of mine, Reed. In my memories, he was always with a runny nose, dragging me along on muddy adventures, climbing trees to steal bird eggs, wading into streams to catch fish. Those were our carefree childhood days, shared between us. Later, due to his father's job transfer, his family moved to distant City A, and we lost contact ever since. I never expected that years later, he would actually send someone to approach my parents with a proposal for an arranged meeting. Lakeside Restaurant. We met face to face. After so many years apart, Reed had long shed the childishness of his youth. Tall and upright, with arched brows and bright eyes, he exuded a striking charisma. Dressed in a well-tailored custom suit, he appeared both mature and steady. Though his expression remained serious, a hint of tenderness flickered in his eyes, especially when his gaze settled on me. I found myself unable to meet his eyes, a strange flutter stirring in my chest. Through our conversation, I learned that he had followed in his father's footsteps and joined the military as a young man. Years of military life not only tempered his willpower but also bestowed upon him an indescribable demeanor. After leaving the army, he entered government service and currently works at a confidential unit. The matchmaking meeting went smoothly, with both sides and their parents chatting harmoniously. We shared stories from our past, exchanged experiences of our personal growth, and talked about our hopes and plans for the future. In this pleasant atmosphere, we set the date for our engagement, just 1 month later. That night, I went back to Silas's place to move my things. Surprisingly, Silas and Sienna were also there. Sienna was sitting on the sofa eating snacks while Silas was in the kitchen cooking for her. Back when we were together, Silas never cooked. He believed cooking was a woman's job. But later, I saw pictures on Sienna's side account of Silas cooking stir-fry for her. Only then did I realize that Silas could actually cook. The caption on that post from Sienna read, "Hubby won't let me cook, says girls will start smelling bad if they inhale too much grease smoke." I found it utterly ridiculous that he couldn't bear to let his Sienna cook, yet had no problem with me doing it. The so-called stinking smell was clearly a veiled jab at me. All these years, I've treated Silas like a prince, yet he's been secretly looking down on me. But don't forget, I was also the cherished treasure of my parents. Seeing me return, Sienna greeted enthusiastically, "Cora, you're here? Silas is making my favorite salt-baked shrimp. You should try some later. Silas is such a great cook, I've loved his food since childhood." Her words dripped with smugness and boastfulness. Hearing the commotion, Silas emerged from the kitchen where he'd been busy cooking. When he saw me, his gaze momentarily faltered, and he forced a smile. "Cora, you're back. I thought I wouldn't come back, didn't you?" I finished his sentence for him. He hesitated, saying nothing. Seeing him in an apron, looking so awkward, I actually found it somewhat comical. The man I once idolized turned out to be just an ordinary man after all. At this moment, I truly felt how utterly ordinary he was. I thought he would explain why he left during my birthday party, or ask me why I mentioned breaking up. But he said nothing about it. Instead, he was worried that I might have a problem with Sienna and started defending her. "Cora, Sienna injured her leg, so I brought her home to take care of her. When I'm not around, you should help look after her too. And also, the bed in the master bedroom is softer. Let her sleep there. You can take the guest room." Suppressing my sarcasm, I asked, "Then where will you sleep?" I don't know if it's because Sienna moved into our home, but Silas seems to be deliberately keeping his distance from me. He's even unwilling to share the same bed anymore. He said, "I'll sleep on the couch." I remained silent for a long moment before asking, "Didn't you see the text I sent you?" Before Silas could respond, Sienna slowly rose from the sofa and said, "Cora, please stop fighting with Silas, okay? If you want to blame someone, blame me. It's my fault for suddenly spraining my ankle. I have no other family here except Silas, so I had no choice but to ask him to come to the hospital." As she said this, Sienna's eyes turned red, her voice filled with sorrow and grievance. Seeing this, Silas immediately walked over, gently wrapping an arm around Sienna's shoulders and soothing her softly, "Sienna, you've sprained your ankle and need someone to take care of you. I believe." He looked at me, his eyes clearly carrying a hint of warning, "I believe Cora will understand." Sienna looked at me again, a hint of triumph in her eyes. "Cora, once my leg injury heals, I'll leave. Don't threaten Silas into breaking up anymore. He hates being threatened the most. If he actually ends it in a fit of anger, you'll just blame me again." Seeing Sienna's fragile tears, Silas glared at me angrily, his tone severe. Cora, say something. Are you blaming Sienna? You're being so unreasonable. Sienna hurt her leg, it's only right that I take care of her. I don't know why you have to be so jealous all the time. Impatience was written all over his face as he continued to scold me. Alright, stop sulking already. If you have nothing else to do, go rest in the guest room. All your things are already packed and moved there. He clearly didn't want to see me anymore. I no longer had the energy to argue with him. In the 6 months since Sienna returned, we'd already fought too much. Every argument chipped away at what little affection remained between us. I said quietly, don't bother. You don't need to sleep on the sofa, I'll move out. Hearing this, Silas merely frowned slightly, a barely perceptible coldness flashing through his eyes, but he didn't speak a word to stop me. His silence was like an invisible knife, piercing my heart deeply. Fortunately, Silas had already packed my things and placed them in the guest bedroom earlier, which saved me a lot of trouble. I contacted a moving company overnight and moved out of his house completely. He watched as I carried out boxes one by one, yet he never stopped me or even glanced my way. He even sat at the table, meticulously peeling shrimp and removing the veins for Sienna, worried that the salt-baked shrimp would get cold. For me, this scene was so glaring, so bitterly ironic. In 8 years, he had never done anything like this for me, yet now he was being so considerate for another woman. As I finished moving all my things and turned to look at this house once more, an ache welled up in my heart. When Silas and I first met, he was already living in this apartment. Back then, it was nearly empty, nothing but a bed inside. Everything here was gathered piece by my own hands, each object carrying memories of us. It's just a shame that nothing here, not even the people, belongs to me anymore. Seeing me linger, Silas thought I still couldn't tear myself away. Finally, he stood up from beside Sienna and walked toward me. His words carried coldness and distance. Cora, stop making a scene. My patience has limits too. You should be more mature. Sienna's treatment will take a while. Just stay out for a while. You can come back after she recovers. I didn't respond. The birthday gift he promised me yesterday, a day after my birthday had passed, still hadn't materialized. Clearly, he'd forgotten entirely. I looked at him, at this man I'd loved for 8 years. My heart no longer stirred. The love and warmth that once were had now quieted like a still pond. Silas, I wish you happiness, I said quietly, carrying my last suitcase, walking away without looking back. Hearing my words, Silas suddenly felt an inexplicable tightness in his chest, as though something had been lost in an instant. Yet he still didn't speak to stop me. Shortly after I stepped out the door, he closed it, shutting me out completely. Sitting in the car, I received a message from Sienna's secondary account. Your breakup text, Silas already saw it last night. He finds you annoying and says not to make unreasonable demands. Oh, by the way, there's something I've been meaning to tell you. That apartment was originally bought for me by Silas. But back then, the old woman sent me abroad. Silas stayed there, unable to bring himself to move, because it reminded him of me. Thanks for redecorating it for me. But honestly, I don't like that style. Silas has already promised me to tear it all down and start over. I stared at the words on my phone screen, yet felt strangely calm. I didn't reply. I didn't get angry. I just silently removed her from my contacts. I returned home and began bustling with preparations for my engagement with Reed. Every detail had to be perfect. I saw Silas again on the day I went to the bridal shop to try on wedding dresses. As soon as I entered, I spotted Silas and Sienna. They were also trying on wedding attire. It seemed their happy event was approaching. Silas was gently adjusting the hem of Sienna's dress, his eyes filled with adoration. His movements were unusually tender, as though handling a priceless work of art. Sienna, you look absolutely stunning in that dress, Silas sincerely praised. Sienna stood before the mirror, admiring her own beauty, her face radiant with a blissful smile. She seemed to notice me standing at the doorway and said to Silas, "Silas, when will the engagement ring you personally designed for me be ready?" At these words, a sudden pang shot through my heart. A ring designed by Silas? Though Silas wasn't a professional jewelry designer, he was an architect. In moments of tenderness, he had once promised to design our wedding bands himself. But now, he's bestowed this honor upon another woman. Even though I no longer love him, my heart still feels as if pricked by a needle. Silas was still adjusting Sienna's dress and didn't notice me at the door. He said dotingly to Sienna, "Soon, just a couple more days. Then we can wear the wedding rings I designed myself to take our wedding photos, fulfilling your dream." "It's our shared dream," Sienna corrected. Silas didn't argue, only smiling faintly. He slowly rose to his feet. But the moment he stood up, he noticed me reflected in the mirror. A flicker of surprise flashed through his eyes before he whirled around sharply. My name escaped his lips, "Cora." For a moment, Silas froze, his eyes betraying a trace of panic. But almost instantly, he composed himself again. "Cora, what brings you here?" he asked. Without waiting for my reply. He suddenly thought of something and frowned. "Did you hear someone say that Sienna and I were coming here to take wedding photos, and came to make trouble again?" Make trouble? Hearing this phrase, I laughed at myself mockingly. Before, to keep him from getting too close to Sienna, I had indeed done some crazy things. So in his eyes, all those were just acts of making trouble. Looking back now, it really was making trouble, disrupting his and Sienna's relationship. But I'll never do it again. I said indifferently, "I'm not interested in how you perceive me." "Then why did you come?" Silas asked defensively. As he spoke, he took a step forward to stand in front of Sienna, as if afraid I might suddenly lash out at her. I remained silent. Back when Sienna had just returned to the country, she had lived alone in that apartment. Once, she said there was a man loitering in the hallway and she was terrified. In the dead of night, she called Silas over to keep her company. Sensing something was off, I grabbed some people and went there. I knocked on their door. Silas answered wearing a robe. Before he could react, I barged straight into the master bedroom and saw Sienna lying half on the bed, dressed in lingerie, striking an extremely seductive pose. When she noticed me, she panicked. I immediately slapped her twice across the face and shouted, "You shameless bitch! How dare you seduce my boyfriend?" Silas chased into the bedroom and, seeing me hit Sienna, immediately became furious. He shoved me away harshly and embraced the weeping Sienna, whispering comforting words to her. He even yelled at me, "You crazy woman, what's wrong with you?" At that moment, caught off guard, I stumbled and hit the bedside table, leaving a long gash on my forearm. To this day, the scar remains. As I gathered my thoughts and was about to speak, Sienna beat me to it, gently advising, "Cora, don't make everyone lose face any further." Silas was reminded by her and recalled that incident, after which he had been thoroughly mocked by his friends and family. This only made him angrier. He said coldly to me, "Cora, on such an important day as today, I hope you can be sensible and not embarrass everyone." His tone was filled with menace and warning, as if telling me he wouldn't let me off lightly if I dared to cause trouble. I smiled indifferently, feeling already at peace inside. "Don't worry, I won't cause trouble. I'm not here for you, anyway." Silas didn't believe it and pressed further, "Then what do you want to do?" Just then, a tall figure suddenly appeared beside me, wrapping his arm around my waist. "Cora, sorry. I'm late." I turned to look at Reed, a faint smile curling at the corners of my lips. "No, you're just on time." I was early. Reed looked at me tenderly, his eyes shimmering with adoration and affection. We exchanged a smile, lost in each other's gaze. He asked, "Are these two newcomers your friends?" I pondered for a moment. "Not really, I guess." "Oh." Reed responded without further questions. At that moment, a staff member from the bridal shop approached. With a warm smile, she said enthusiastically, "You two must be Cora and Reed, who booked the wedding photo shoot today, right?" I nodded. Please follow me, you too, the clerk said warmly. Because Reed and I had ordered the highest tier package. I didn't look at Silas's reaction, just hooked my arm with Reed's and was about to follow the clerk. At that moment, Sienna's voice rang out, Cora, are you so desperate to stop Silas and I from taking wedding photos that you'd just grab some random man to pose with? Is your private life always this messy? I heard her words and couldn't help feeling a surge of anger in my heart. I held back and retorted, at least when I ask him to take photos, both of us are single now. Unlike some people who used to cling to other people's boyfriends, completely lacking boundaries. Sienna's face immediately darkened, but instead of confronting me, she turned to cling to Silas's arm. Silas. Silas looked at me disapprovingly and scolded, Cora, must you be so harsh with your words? I looked at him and demanded, what gives you the right to lecture me? What you should do is manage your own people, not poke your nose into others' business. You. Silas was speechless with anger. He pointed at Reed and said, Cora, did you deliberately bring this man here to take wedding photos just to spite me? You're being utterly childish. Let me make this clear, if you take wedding photos with this man, there's no going back for us. Silas threatened, glaring at me fiercely. I couldn't be bothered to deal with him any longer. Linking my arm with Reed, I said to the bridal shop staff, lead the way. Silas instantly looked utterly incredulous, yet still made no move to stop me. He glared at my retreating figure with resentment, convinced I was still throwing a tantrum. He was certain Reed was just an actor I'd hired. By the time Reed and I emerged from the bridal boutique, Silas and Sienna had already left. After that day, I heard nothing from Silas or Sienna for a long time. Ever since Sienna became a group admin, she'd kicked me out of our mutual friends chat group, and I never requested to rejoin. I only told my closest friends about my engagement. Although they all knew Silas too, I had already asked them not to reveal anything about me to Silas, nor did I want to hear anything about him anymore. So none of our mutual friends mentioned Silas in front of me again. Until the night before the engagement. Silas suddenly sent me a message, Cora, if you admit you're wrong and apologize, I'll let you move back in. I didn't reply to him, silently cursing myself for forgetting to block him. Without hesitation, I added him to the blacklist. The next day. The engagement party was held as scheduled at the lakeside restaurant. Reed and I walked in hand, while relatives and friends below the stage took photos, capturing this beautiful moment for us. Just as Reed and I were exchanging engagement rings, someone suddenly burst recklessly into the venue. It was Silas. Silas stood at the entrance, looking at me from afar over the guests. His face was full of shock and bewilderment. He asked, Cora, are you really going to get engaged to him? I found Silas' question somewhat amusing. Wasn't it obvious enough? I simply replied, yes. He frowned at me, his voice trembling as he asked, then what does our 8-year relationship mean? I didn't want to elaborate further and just said, you should ask yourself that. Silas froze instantly, at a loss for words. I couldn't be bothered to respond and instead turned to my fiancé Reed, personally sliding the engagement ring onto his finger. At that moment, Silas suddenly shouted, Cora, don't. He tried to step forward to stop it. One of my best friends blocked him. Silas, what are you doing? When you were all lovey-dovey with Sienna before, did you ever think about Cora? What's with this sudden act of devotion now? Another best friend stood up too. Silas, if you have any shame left, stop pestering her. Silas looked at me with hurt in his eyes. Cora, the thing with Sienna isn't what you think, I can explain. Please don't get engaged to him, okay? I didn't give him a chance to explain and simply said coldly, Silas, stop making a scene. The more you act like this, the more I'll despise you. A glimmer of pain flashed in Silas' eyes. He must have remembered, this was something he had often said to me in the past. Now, I was simply returning those very words to him. I handed in my resignation at the company, planning to move to City A with Reed to prepare for the wedding. After completing the procedures and coming downstairs, I unexpectedly ran into Silas outside the building. It had been a long time since we last met, and he looked much more haggard, with a touch of exhaustion and helplessness in his eyes. When he saw me, he quickly walked up and called out softly, "Cora." He instinctively reached out a hand, as if wanting to grasp my fingertips and relive the warmth we once shared. I dodged it. For the past 6 months since Sienna returned, Silas had always avoided me whenever possible, steering clear of any contact. Suddenly being this close, I actually felt a bit uncomfortable. He seemed hurt. "Cora, you." I smiled. "Silas, where's your Sienna? Didn't she come with you?" He lowered his head slightly. "Cora, Sienna, I know you're upset that I've been too close to her, but I really just see her as a sister. I have absolutely no improper thoughts about her anymore." I retorted mockingly. "Anymore? So there were some before?" He hastily explained, "Those were all reckless things from my youth. Now, there's only you in my heart." I asked with a smile, "Would you dare say that to her face?" Silas hesitated. "Cora, you know Sienna has depression, I don't want to trigger her. As for that wedding photo shoot last time, it wasn't because I actually wanted to marry her. She said she wanted to experience how it felt to be a bride, and I just didn't want to disappoint her." I ruthlessly exposed his lie. If she wants to be a bride, her future husband can fulfill that wish. Since when was it your responsibility to worry about it? Or is it that she simply wants to be your bride? Silas avoided eye contact, at a loss for words. Because what Sienna had indeed said was, she wanted to experience what it felt like to be his bride. I continued, "Also, you couldn't bear to disappoint her, but you could bear to disappoint me? That ring, you once said was designed for me, yet you gave it to Sienna." "Cora," Silas said urgently, "I can redesign one for you." "No need." I coldly cut him off. "My fiancé will give me better ones. As for you who's already broken your promise, I won't trust you again." "Cora, Silas wanted to say more, but his phone rang just then. He glanced at the screen, his expression conflicted. "Cora, I need to take this call. Wait for me." With that, he turned and walked quickly away, his back to me as if afraid I might overhear the conversation. But the truth was, I wouldn't be waiting for him anymore. By the time Silas turned back, I had already driven away. Through the rearview mirror, I saw him chase after the car for a few steps before ultimately giving up with helpless resignation. I received a text from an unknown number. The words were filled with accusations and provocation. "Cora, what exactly did you say to Silas? He's been distancing himself from me these past few days. You're already engaged, you should stay away from Silas. Stop eyeing what's in someone else's pot while still holding your own bowl." I hadn't planned to respond, but her words truly ignited my anger. I already gave that man up to her, and yet she still comes to trouble me. Does she really think I'm someone to be bullied? I texted back, "Silas told me himself he only sees you as a little sister." How pathetic. Didn't you boast about your 10-year bond? If you're so capable, then keep him by your side. When I mocked her, I was also laughing at myself. What did those 8 years of my feelings even amount to? Might as well have fed them to a dog. Sienna didn't reply anymore. A few more days passed. Reed decided to return to City A. I accompanied him as we revisited some of the sites in City H. We went to the most spiritually potent church in the city, and when we reached the marriage stone, it suddenly struck me, back when Silas had just agreed to be with me, we once came here together to fasten a love lock. I walked over, intending to take it down. When I found that love lock and was just thinking about how to smash it apart. Suddenly, I noticed the bottom of the love lock. The names engraved were actually, Silas, Sienna. The words "a harmonious union lasting 100 years" were also inscribed. I froze in shock, recalling the scene at that time. Back then, I was indeed the one who picked this love lock, but when it came to engraving, it was Silas who wrote 2 names on a piece of paper and handed it to the engraver. I never once doubted that the names on that paper weren't his and mine. Later, after the engraving was done, he kept the lock tightly in his hand and fastened it himself. At that time, I still thought it was his way of showing love. Only at this moment did I realize I had been a joke for the past 8 years. Cora. Suddenly, a familiar voice came from beside me. I turned to look. It was Silas, and Sienna. He just happened to see me holding that love lock. He knew I had seen the names on it, and his face instantly turned deathly pale. He just stared at me blankly, not even knowing how to explain. I just smiled faintly. What a loving couple you two are. Silas, Sienna. I pronounced the names written above. Hearing me say those names, Silas turned even paler. Meanwhile, a clear flash of surprise passed through Sienna's eyes. She probably didn't know, 8 years ago, Silas and I came here and fastened a lover's padlock for the two of them. How ironic. She walked over, picked up that lover's padlock to verify, and indeed found her name and Silas's engraved on it. She immediately became smug. Silas, we will grow old together, won't we? Silas opened his mouth, looking eager to say something, glancing at Sienna, then at me, and finally at Reed standing beside me. He pressed his lips together before finally saying, Sienna, I. He hemmed and hawed for a long time but couldn't get the words out. I didn't look at him again, instead turning my gaze to Reed. Reed, I heard the love locks here are really effective. Shall we go get one together? Sure, Reed replied, his eyes showing that unique tenderness only this tough man reserved for me. As I was walking away arm in arm with Reed, Silas suddenly called out to me, Cora. I turned to look at him calmly. His lips trembled before he finally uttered just 3 words, I'm sorry. A mocking smile curled at the corners of my lips as I remained silent. For me, it had already come too late. I'd found my own happiness, while he was destined to remain just a passerby in my life. The day before Reed and I were set to leave H City, my best friend suddenly sent me a message, her tone dripping with schadenfreude. Cora, guess what? Sienna's so-called severe depression turned out to be completely fake. Silas found out, and now they're making a scene at the hospital. Attached to her message was a video clip showing Silas and Sienna in the midst of a dramatic public argument at the hospital. Silas seemed emotionally out of control, his voice laced with hysterical accusations. Sienna, why did you lie to me? Didn't you say you had severe depression? Sienna still tried to defend herself. Silas, that doctor was talking nonsense. My medical records were issued abroad, it's normal he couldn't understand them. Silas mercilessly exposed her, that doctor studied abroad. Realizing she couldn't deceive him any longer, Sienna broke into tears, playing the victim. Silas, do you know what kind of life I had overseas? I just wanted you to care for me a little more after I returned home. What's so wrong about that? Silas roared, but you still shouldn't have kept it from me. Do you know how many times I stood Cora up because of you? Now she's engaged to someone else, and I couldn't even go to her to win her back because I had to take care of you. Haven't I been good enough to you? Hearing this, Sienna instantly broke down. She shrieked, Silas. Don't you dare pin all of this on me. You stood Cora up simply because you didn't love her enough, your heart has always belonged to me. Our names are engraved together on that love lock. Face your true feelings. The love lock. Silas' face immediately darkened. Sienna, I admit, during those first 2 years after you left, I really couldn't let you go. When Cora pursued me, I just went along with it. Back then, you truly lived in my heart, but after 8 years with Cora, I had long since come to regard her as my only wife in this lifetime. If not for your sudden return, why would Cora have left me? Silas closed his eyes in anguish. Yet Sienna refused to yield. Enough, Silas. Is admitting you love me really so difficult? When you were with Cora, you'd come to me whenever I called, countless times abandoning her for me. You gave the necklace I didn't want to Cora. On her birthday, you abandoned her just because of one phone call from me. Your heart has always been full of me. When the birthday was mentioned, Silas suddenly remembered something. His eyes flickered with a faint light as he muttered to himself, that's right. I promised Cora I'd make up for her birthday gift. As he said this, he was about to rush out of the hospital. But Sienna pulled him back. Silas, Cora's birthday passed so long ago. What's the point of giving her a gift now? She's already asked her fiancé to go to City A, don't disturb her anymore. Let me go. For the first time, Silas violently shook off Sienna's grip. Sienna fell to the ground with a pained ouch. But Silas didn't even look back, leaving resolutely. The video ended right there. My best friend also sent a message, Cora, if Silas comes looking for you, don't you dare give him a kind look. I simply replied, he won't find me. Indeed, I had long since moved and changed my number. The next day, Reed and I boarded a flight to City A. After arriving, we immediately plunged into wedding preparations. Reed treated me with utmost care, not only introducing me into his social circle but also personally presenting me to his friends. During holidays, he would meticulously plan itineraries, showing me every corner of City A to help me quickly adapt to this unfamiliar city. This involuntarily made me recall my time with Silas years ago. Back then, it took me 3 years to finally get the chance to accidentally appear at one of Silas's gatherings with friends, just so I could stand before his friends and be recognized as Silas's girlfriend. Compared to him, Reed gave me a greater sense of security. I heard news of Silas again. It was still my best friend who told me. She said Silas had been searching for me like crazy. But none of our mutual friends revealed my whereabouts to him. He only knew I had come to a city, so he followed me there, yet he never managed to find me. I asked my best friend, what about Sienna? Has she stopped clinging to Silas and actually allowed him to search for me like this? My best friend said, Sienna used their child as leverage to trick Silas into coming back. But Silas isn't a fool either, he secretly got a paternity test done, and the child wasn't his. From that moment on, I no longer actively sought news about Silas, instead pouring all my energy into preparing for my wedding with Reed. Reed and I had our wedding as planned, grand and magnificent. As I sat in the wedding car on my way to the ceremony, I glimpsed Silas wandering down the street, utterly dejected, his former radiance completely gone. I simply smiled faintly and walked toward my groom.